We have ground to make up. The last 2 years were not good for us, we are a lot better this year again, but we want to make the next step, that we want to end up where we were in 2018 again, for us, Nico was the best candidate for it, and therefore we made a change.
Now it's clear that Mick will not be racing in 2023. And many have questioned Steiner's decision to fire a young driver and replace him with a 35-year-old veteran who's yet to prove his worth in F1. Nevertheless, this is the reality, and it doesn't sit right with the Schumacher family. Although Mick is very disappointed with how things unfolded for him and his career in Formula 1, it's safe to say that his uncle, Ralf Schumacher, is also furious when it comes to Steiner and how he treated his nephew. Ralf Schumacher didn't hold back on words, and what he had to say about Steiner has come across positively in the media. Now, Mick joined Haas in 2021, and in his second year, he has failed to perform better under pressure. He was mostly pressured by two facts, the first being Magnussen and the car's ability to score points, while the second was the pressure that he felt from the team owner and Günther Steiner. Mick is a young driver that has had a lot of pressure in the previous season, and in the end, Haas decided that enough is enough and they don't want to invest in Mick anymore. This is a decision that raised some eyebrows in the paddock, however it's the reality, and Haas decided to bring Hülkenberg in as Mick's replacement. With that being said, the Schumacher family is very angry with how things currently stand between Haas and Mick, and as we mentioned earlier, Ralf wasn't really kind when he explained Steiner and his behaviour towards Mick. On top of that, Steiner defended his actions and it was a whole show to watch. Ralf Schumacher compared Mick to Tsunoda, adding that the Japanese driver will have at least one more season to prove himself, while his nephew has been stripped of this opportunity. Of course, this is a disappointment for such a young racing driver. The fact that it took so long made it clear that it would not be quite so easy. They obviously approached the matter with different standards. You have to give a driver 2 or 3 years. We see, for example, Yuki Tsunoda, who sits in a supposedly better car and also has difficulties. This is also the public opinion of the majority of the F1 fans, as everyone believes that Mick needed at least one more year to prove himself in the sport. This was also shared by an ex-F1 driver, Hans-Joachim Stuck, who also added that Steiner is a fool to put Mick under such a huge amount of pressure without any particular reason. On top of that, Ralf also spoke about the treatment that his nephew received in Haas, adding, "That's not how you deal with an employee. That's why the result wasn't a big surprise. You have to promote such a young driver. You have to hug him from time to time. The first year was difficult. Now he suddenly had Kevin Magnussen in front of him and was able to learn. And the learning curve was very steep. And that's the only thing that matters for a young driver." Now, before we move on, we wanted to tell you about the amazing deal the official F1 store is doing right now. Black Friday week and holiday season is here, and by using the code F1RB at checkout, you'll get 30% off your entire order for a limited time only. So check out the first link down in the description to get yourself this juicy discount. Günther Steiner has hinted about Mick possibly being sacked in the earlier stages of the season when he said that he's done with rookies. To this, Ralf said that if you don't want junior drivers, then you shouldn't give them plenty of room and space to grow in the first place. Also, it's safe to say that the decision itself was quite a hypocritical one, with Haas opting for 2 rookies in 2021, and now 2 years later, they have veterans driving for the team. Schumacher continued to talk about the treatment that Mick received at Haas, adding, "Mick has shown that there is potential, but no matter what he did, the team and Steiner were never satisfied with it. The whole behaviour cannot be explained with normal standards. It almost has to be something personal. I think Steiner doesn't get along with the fact that someone else is the focus at Haas. He's very happy to be the one who's in the foreground. He's a self-promoting person." Now, apart from Ralf and the Schumacher family, Toto Wolff has also criticised Steiner and his decision to sack Mick. Wolff and Mercedes are currently in the centre of attention when it comes to Mick Schumacher, due to the fact that Mick is related to the reserve driver role at Mercedes, and Wolff is the one who's going to have to decide whether he'll introduce Mick to the Silver Arrows family. When talking about Steiner and his decision with Sky F1 Sports, Toto Wolff said, "He comes from the mountains, the air is thinner up there, so it's difficult to think clearly." Obviously, many fans and experts are having a hard time believing that Haas are actually going to bring a 35-year-old veteran who hasn't been on the podium in his F1 career, and hasn't driven an F1 race in 3 years. Sabbaticals are a good thing sometimes, and we know drivers like Ocon and Albon took a sabbatical but then returned to the grid stronger than ever. Still, at 35 years old, it's not really clear as to how Hülkenberg will bring lots of quality to Haas. True, he was a consistent driver, and that's exactly what Haas needs at this moment. A driver that won't crash the car and will score points every second weekend is exactly the type of driver that Haas can rely on. However, this is a short-term or practically mid-term solution for the sport, as Haas lost a talent like Mick just because they chose not to believe in his talent. Mick Schumacher spoke about his tenure with Haas as of now, saying that the trend was pointing upwards, but he's very disappointed because the team chose to not believe him and replace him with Hülkenberg. We've had our ups and downs for sure, but I think the trend was always pointing upwards, and I think that's what's important. It's only my second year in Formula 1. Last year, I don't know if you can really count it as a year because it was a tough one. We were only at the back. It was definitely something I had to get used to this season, being in the midfield pack fighting, and I feel that across the year we've managed to do that. I definitely want to stick around and I have time now, so I will see all the options that I have and then yes, hopefully take the right one that will bring me into a bright future. Still, returning back to the grid is easier said than done, which is why Mick acknowledges that there is a difficult task ahead of him. That is why the decision of Haas isn't sitting right with anyone on the grid, and although Mick hasn't been able to perform well after the Austrian GP, most of the times it was the car's fault. Magnussen was also similar to Mick, with the exception of Austin and Mexico, as the team finished P8 in the Constructors' Championship ahead of AlphaTauri and Williams. Günther Steiner spoke about his decision to sack Mick and bring in an experienced veteran to take his place, adding that it was nothing personal with Mick and that it was better for the team. I tried to do a good job. It's not about attention, it's about my attention. It's about doing a good job. If people take attention off it, I cannot say, don't look at me. I'm not doing it on purpose. I don't think I need to defend myself here. Everybody can do and say what they want, and I do what I think is best for the team and leave it at that. No fallout. With Mick, this is not an issue for me with Mick. I clear that air very well with him. I know that it's not him. It has nothing to do with him. Nevertheless, it's a difficult situation for Mick now, who seems to have set his eyes on the reserve driver's spot in Mercedes. The Brackley-based team is currently in need of a reserve driver, with De Vries leaving the spot for a starting one in AlphaTauri and Van Dorn signing for Aston Martin. On top of that, Wolff also praised Schumacher prior to this whole situation unfolding, as it did, adding that it would be an honour for Mercedes to have a Schumacher in their family. Plus, Michael Schumacher played a vital role in Mercedes' development from 2010 to 2013. And when the team was finally able to win races, Schumacher retired for a second time and Hamilton was able to conquer everything with the team. So, what do you think is next for Schumacher and his career? Do you think that he will have a genuine chance of working out a deal with Mercedes and be placed in a car like Williams in the near future, or even potentially conquering a Mercedes seat? Let us know in the comments down below.